The wedding dress was torn at the hem, muddy from her desperate sprint through the cemetery behind St. Augustine's Chapel. Marcus Williams pulled over the moment he saw her stumbling along Highway 47, her veil catching on roadside brambles like ghostly fingers trying to drag her back. The rain had started 15 minutes ago, turning the September afternoon into a watercolor blur of grays and browns, and this woman, this bride, was soaked to the bone. "Hey," Marcus called out, rolling down his window. "You okay?" She turned toward his voice, and he saw the terror first, raw, animalistic fear that made his chest tighten with recognition. He'd seen that look before, in his ex-wife Sarah's eyes during those final months before she'd packed Emma's things and disappeared into the night. The bride's mascara had run in dark rivers down her cheeks, and her bouquet was nowhere to be seen. Instead, she clutched a small leather purse against her chest like armor. "Please," she whispered, barely audible over the rain drumming against his truck's roof. "I need help." Marcus didn't hesitate. He'd been driving back from Emma's soccer practice, his 8-year-old daughter asleep in her car seat behind him when he'd spotted the white figure stumbling along the road's shoulder. Now, looking at this woman's desperate eyes, every protective instinct he'd honed as a single father kicked into overdrive. "Get in," he said, unlocking the doors. "We'll figure this out." The bride, she couldn't have been older than 25, slid into the passenger seat with shaking hands. Water dripped from her dress onto his worn cloth seats, but Marcus didn't care. He cranked up the heat and grabbed the emergency blanket he kept in his glove compartment, the one he'd bought after that night 3 years ago, when Sarah had called him from a gas station in tears, begging him to pick her up. "Thank you," the woman breathed, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. Her voice carried a slight accent, southern, maybe Alabama or Georgia. "Marcus Williams," he replied, glancing at Emma in the rearview mirror. Still sleeping, thank God. His daughter had already been through enough chaos in her young life. "Where do you need to go, Lily?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Her engagement ring caught the dim afternoon light, a massive diamond surrounded by smaller stones that probably cost more than Marcus made in 6 months at the auto shop. But it was the way she kept twisting it, like she was trying to work up the courage to take it off, that told him everything he needed to know. "I don't know," she admitted. I couldn't go through with it. Something felt wrong. Really wrong." Marcus had been married once. He understood the difference between cold feet and genuine terror. This wasn't about wedding jitters or second thoughts about the flavor of cake. This was about survival. "Daddy," Emma's sleepy voice drifted from the back seat. "Who's the princess?" Lily turned around, and for the first time since she'd gotten in the truck, her expression softened. "Hi there, sweetheart. I'm Lily. Sorry if I woke you up." "You look like Cinderella," Emma said with 8-year-old frankness, "but sadder." "Emma," Marcus warned gently, but Lily was already smiling, the first genuine emotion he'd seen from her. "It's okay," Lily said. "She's right. I do feel pretty sad right now." Marcus pulled into the parking lot of Miller's Diner, the same place he and Emma came for pancakes every Sunday morning. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could see the warm glow of the interior, the red vinyl booths where he'd spent countless hours helping Emma with homework while nursing endless cups of coffee. It felt like neutral ground, safe territory, where they could figure out what came next. "Let's get you dried off and get some coffee in you," Marcus suggested. "Then you can tell me what's really going on." Inside the diner, Dolores Martinez looked up from behind the counter with raised eyebrows. She'd been serving coffee and comfort food to the residents of Cedar Falls for 37 years, and nothing much surprised her anymore. But a muddy bride walking in with Marcus Williams and his daughter on a rainy Tuesday afternoon? That was new. "Booth in the back, hun," Dolores said without missing a beat, grabbing a stack of clean towels. "Coffee's fresh, and I've got some of that vanilla creamer you like, Marcus." They settled into the corner booth, Emma sliding in next to Lily with the easy acceptance of childhood. Marcus watched his daughter show Lily her new soccer trophy, chattering about her team's winning goal, and felt something loosen in his chest. Emma had always been good at reading people, at offering comfort without questions. It was a skill born from necessity. Too many nights when Mommy had been sad and Daddy had been trying to hold everything together. "So, Marcus said once Dolores had brought their drinks and Emma was occupied with her coloring book. Want to tell me what happened back there? Lily wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, like she was trying to absorb its warmth. The steam rose between them, creating a temporary barrier that seemed to make confession easier. His name is Vincent Torrino. I met him 6 months ago at a gallery opening in Atlanta. He was charming, sophisticated, said he was in import-export, traveled a lot for business. Everything moved so fast. Marcus nodded, thinking of his own whirlwind courtship with Sarah. Sometimes fast was just passion, but sometimes it was pressure wearing a prettier mask. The wedding was supposed to be small, just family and a few close friends, but Vincent kept inviting more people, business associates, he said, men in expensive suits who didn't smile much. And the presents, she shuddered. Envelopes full of cash, thousands of dollars from people I'd never met. That bothered you? Marcus asked, though he was already starting to understand why. It wasn't just the money. It was the way they looked at me like I was part of some transaction. And Vincent, he changed, became possessive, controlling, started making decisions about where we'd live, what I'd do for work, who I could be friends with, all under the guise of taking care of me. Emma looked up from her coloring book, sensing the shift in mood, even if she didn't understand the words. Marcus reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand reassuringly. What made you run? Lily's grip tightened on her coffee mug. This morning, while I was getting ready, I overheard Vincent on the phone in the next room. He was speaking Italian. I don't understand much, but I caught enough. He was talking about some kind of shipment coming in next week, about needing the wedding to go smoothly so no one would suspect anything. And then, she took a shaky breath. Then he said something about my father's restaurant. Your father has a restaurant? Had. He owned Chen's Garden in Savannah for 20 years before he passed last year. I inherited it, but it's been closed since the funeral. I haven't had the heart to reopen it or sell it. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. He said something about it being perfect for storage, about how marrying me gave him legal access to the property. That's when I knew I wasn't marrying Vincent Torrino, loving fiancé. I was marrying Vincent Torrino, criminal. The pieces were starting to fall into place for Marcus, forming a picture he didn't like. He'd grown up in Cedar Falls, where everyone knew everyone else's business, where the worst crime was usually teenagers spray painting the water tower. But he'd watched enough news, read enough headlines to recognize the signs Lily was describing. Did you tell anyone about your suspicions? Who would I tell? Vincent isolated me from most of my friends, said they were jealous of our relationship, trying to poison me against him. My family, she laughed bitterly. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. Vincent is all I have left. Or was. Emma set down her purple crayon and looked at Lily with a serious 8-year-old eyes. My mommy left too, she said matter-of-factly. But Daddy says sometimes people leave because they're scared, not because they don't love us. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Emma rarely talked about Sarah's departure, and when she did, it was usually with this same calm acceptance that broke his heart. Your daughter is very wise, Lily told Marcus, then turned back to Emma. Did it make you sad when your mommy left? At first, Emma admitted. But then Daddy and me learned how to make really good grilled cheese, and we have movie nights every Friday, and Dolores lets me help make pies sometimes. So maybe it's okay that it's just us now. Lily's smile was watery but genuine. You're lucky to have such a good daddy. I know, Emma said, with the confidence of a child who had never doubted her father's love. He fixes everything. If only it were that simple, Marcus thought. But looking at Lily's desperate gratitude and his daughter's unwavering faith, he knew he was already committed to trying. "Okay," he said, pulling out his phone. "First things first, we need to get you somewhere safe for the night. Then tomorrow, we figure out what to do about Vincent." "I don't have anywhere to go," Lily admitted. "All my things are at Vincent's house. My car, my clothes, everything. And I don't have much money. Vincent handled all the finances." Another red flag, Marcus noted. Isolation, financial control, rushed marriage to gain legal access to property. The pattern was becoming clearer, and it made his stomach turn. "You can stay at our house tonight," he said, ignoring the voice in his head that sounded suspiciously like his mother warning him about getting involved with strangers. "We have a guest room. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." "I can't ask you to do that. You don't even know me." "You didn't ask. I offered. And Emma's right. I do fix things. Or at least, I try to." As they prepared to leave the diner, Dolores approached their table with a to-go bag. "Soup and sandwiches for later," she said to Lily, with maternal firmness. "You look like you haven't eaten properly in days, mija." "Thank you," Lily whispered, clearly overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky remained overcast and threatening. Marcus helped Emma into her car seat, while Lily stood beside the truck, looking back toward the highway like she was expecting Vincent to come roaring after them at any moment. "He'll be looking for me," she said, as Marcus started the engine. "The wedding was supposed to start at 4. It's almost 6 now." Marcus glanced at the clock on his dashboard. She was right. Somewhere, a church full of wedding guests was probably wondering where the bride had gone, and Vincent Torrino was probably orchestrating a search that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with protecting his criminal enterprise. "We'll deal with that tomorrow," Marcus said, pulling out of the parking lot. "Tonight, you're safe. That's what matters." But even as he said the words, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were already in deeper than any of them realized. As they drove through the gathering dusk towards his small house on Maple Street, he found himself checking the rearview mirror more than usual, looking for headlights that might be following too close, for signs that Lily's past was already catching up to all of them. The house Marcus had inherited from his grandmother was nothing special. A modest 2-story with blue shutters and a front porch that needed repainting. But it was home, filled with the comfortable chaos of single fatherhood, Emma's art projects covering the refrigerator, mismatched furniture that prioritized comfort over style, and the lingering scent of this morning's pancakes. "Welcome to Casa Williams," Marcus said as they stepped inside, Emma racing ahead to turn on lights and show off her latest Lego creation. "It's not much, but it's ours." Lily stood in the doorway, still wrapped in the emergency blanket, taking in the lived-in warmth of their home. Marcus saw through her eyes. The family photos on the mantelpiece, Emma's soccer cleats kicked off by the front door, the stack of library books on the coffee table that they read together before bedtime. "It's perfect," she said quietly. "It feels like a real home." There was something wistful in her tone that made Marcus wonder what kind of home Vincent had been offering her. Probably something cold and impressive, all marble surfaces and expensive art, but nothing that invited you to kick off your shoes and stay a while. "Guest room is upstairs," Marcus said, leading the way. "Emma's room is right next door if you need anything, and I'm just down the hall." The guest room was small but comfortable, with a window that looked out over the backyard where Emma's swing set stood silhouetted against the darkening sky. Marcus had put fresh sheets on the bed just last week when his sister had visited from Portland, never imagining the next guest would be a runaway bride with secrets that might put them all in danger. "There are towels in the bathroom," he said, suddenly aware of how domestic and ordinary his concern sounded. "And I think I have some clothes that might fit you. Sarah left some things behind when she moved out." Lily turned to face him, and in the soft light of the bedside lamp, he could see just how young she really was. Young and scared and trying so hard to be brave. "Why are you helping me?" You could have just driven past, pretended you didn't see me." Marcus thought about that for a moment, about all the reasons he could give, because Emma was watching and learning how to treat people in crisis, because his grandmother had taught him that kindness was never wasted, because he'd been married to someone who'd needed help leaving a dangerous situation, even if he hadn't understood it at the time. Because someone should. Because you asked for help and I was there to give it. That's how it's supposed to work. Downstairs, Emma was setting the table for 3, carefully arranging the mismatched plates and asking if their new friend Lily liked orange juice or apple juice better. Marcus watched his daughter's easy acceptance of their unexpected guest and felt a surge of pride. Whatever else he'd gotten wrong as a parent, he'd somehow managed to raise a child who led with her heart. As they ate Dolores's soup and sandwiches by the warm glow of the kitchen light, Marcus found himself studying Lily more carefully. She was beautiful in an understated way. Dark hair that had dried in soft waves, delicate features that suggested mixed heritage, and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in every detail of their surroundings. But it was her gentleness with Emma that convinced him he'd made the right choice in bringing her home. "Do you know any princess stories?" Emma asked as they finished eating. "Different ones than the movies?" "I know lots of stories," Lily said, smiling. "My grandmother used to tell me stories from China about brave princesses who saved their kingdoms. Would you like to hear one?" Emma nodded eagerly, and as Lily began spinning a tale about a princess who disguised herself as a warrior to protect her people, Marcus found himself relaxing for the first time since he'd spotted that white dress by the roadside. This felt right, this moment of ordinary magic in his kitchen. It felt like family. But even as he listened to Lily's soft voice weaving stories of courage and redemption, Marcus couldn't forget the fear in her eyes when she'd first gotten into his truck. Somewhere out there, Vincent Torrino was looking for his missing bride. And tomorrow, Marcus would have to decide just how far he was willing to go to help a stranger start over. The answer, he was beginning to suspect, was further than he'd ever imagined. Marcus Williams had never considered himself a hero. At 34, he was just a guy who fixed transmissions at Rodriguez Auto Shop, who made Emma's lunch every morning and braided her hair into lopsided pigtails because YouTube tutorials could only teach him so much. He was a man who'd learned to navigate single parenthood through trial and error, who kept a mental inventory of his daughter's favorite foods, bedtime rituals, and the exact tone of voice that meant she was coming down with something. The morning after Lily's arrival dawned gray and humid, typical for late September in Georgia. Marcus woke to the sound of voices downstairs, Emma's bright chatter mixing with Lily's softer responses. He found them in the kitchen, Emma still in her pajamas with bedhead that defied gravity, while Lily stood at the stove in one of Sarah's old sundresses, carefully tending to what smelled like actual pancakes, not the frozen kind Marcus usually heated up. "Lily knows how to make them from scratch, Daddy," Emma announced, bouncing on her toes with excitement. "And she's teaching me how to flip them without making a mess." Lily looked up as Marcus entered, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the stove. "I hope you don't mind. I couldn't sleep, and Emma was already up, and I wanted to do something to thank you." "You don't need to thank us," Marcus said, accepting the coffee mug Emma thrust into his hands. "But I'm not going to say no to real pancakes." He studied Lily in the morning light, noting the way she'd pinned her hair back with one of Emma's butterfly clips, how she'd rolled up the sleeves of the borrowed dress and made herself at home in his kitchen. She looked younger somehow, less haunted than she had the night before. But he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept drifting toward the window, as if expecting unwelcome visitors. "Sleep okay?" he asked, settling into his usual chair at the small kitchen table. "Better than I expected," Lily admitted, though the shadows under her eyes suggested otherwise. "Your house is so quiet, peaceful. Vincent's place was always busy, people coming and going at all hours, phones ringing, conversations in languages I didn't understand." Emma climbed into the chair beside Marcus, syrup already decorating her chin. "Daddy, can Lily stay forever? She makes pancakes better than IHOP." "Emma," Marcus warned gently, but Lily was already smiling. "That's very sweet, honey, but I can't stay forever. I need to figure out where I belong now." "You belong here," Emma said, with the matter-of-fact certainty of childhood. "Right, Daddy?" Marcus met Lily's eyes across the table, seeing the vulnerability there, the hope she was trying not to show. "We'll figure it out," he said carefully. "No one has to make any permanent decisions today." After breakfast, while Emma got ready for school, Marcus found himself alone with Lily for the first time since yesterday's crisis. She was washing dishes at the sink, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent time in restaurant kitchens. "You don't have to do that," Marcus said, grabbing a dish towel to help dry. "I need to do something. I'm not used to sitting still. My father always said idle hands make for troubled minds." "Tell me about him, your father." Lily's hand stilled in the soapy water. "David Chen. He came here from Taiwan when he was 22 with nothing but a suitcase and a head full of dreams. Worked 3 jobs to save up enough money to open Chen's Garden. It wasn't fancy, just good food and honest prices in a neighborhood that appreciated both." She pulled a plate from the water, studying its plain white surface as if it held memories. "She taught me that food was love made visible, that when you cook for someone, you're giving them a piece of your heart. Vincent never understood that. He took me to expensive restaurants where the portions were tiny and the waiters looked down on you if you didn't know which fork to use for the salad." Marcus nodded, thinking of his own childhood dinners around his grandmother's scarred wooden table where the food was simple but the conversation was rich and warm. "Sounds like your father was a wise man."
"He was, and stubborn, and proud. Maybe too proud." Lily's voice caught slightly. "He never remarried after my mother died, said no one could replace her. I used to worry he was lonely. But now I think he understood something I'm just learning, that it's better to be alone than to be with someone who makes you feel alone." The observation hit closer to home than Marcus cared to admit. He'd spent the last year of his marriage feeling exactly that way, physically present but emotionally isolated, watching Sarah retreat into herself while he scrambled to understand what he'd done wrong. "Is that how Vincent made you feel?" he asked. Lily dried her hands on the dish towel, taking her time with the answer. "At first, no. At first, he made me feel like I was the center of the universe. He'd send flowers to the library where I worked, take me to art galleries and symphony concerts. He seemed so cultured, so sophisticated compared to the guys I dated before." She moved to the window, looking out at Emma's backyard kingdom of swing sets and sandbox adventures. But then little things started changing. He didn't like my friends, said they were holding me back from my potential. He convinced me to quit my job at the library because he could support us both, and wouldn't it be nice to focus on planning our wedding instead of checking out books to people who didn't appreciate literature anyway? Marcus recognized the pattern. Isolation disguised as devotion. Control wrapped in the language of care. When did you start to feel trapped? About 2 months ago. We were at dinner with some of his business associates, and I mentioned wanting to reopen my father's restaurant someday, maybe as a way to honor his memory. Vincent laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Why would you want to work in a kitchen when you could be planning charity galas instead?" Lily's reflection in the window showed a woman still processing betrayal. But it wasn't just what he said. It was how his friends looked at me afterward like I'd said something embarrassing, like wanting to cook was beneath me now that I was with Vincent Torrino. That night, I realized I'd been so busy being grateful for his attention that I'd forgotten to ask myself if I actually enjoyed his company. Emma's bus will be here in 10 minutes, Marcus called upstairs, then turned back to Lily. What do you want to do today? We could drive over to Savannah, see if you can get some of your things from Vincent's place. Lily shook her head quickly. I don't want my things. I want to disappear, to start over somewhere he'll never find me. But I don't know how to do that. I don't have money saved or job skills that translate outside of small-town libraries. Vincent made sure I was dependent on him for everything. Emma thundered down the stairs, backpack bouncing, lunchbox in hand. She stopped in front of Lily and solemnly offered her a piece of paper covered in crayon drawings. I made this for you. It's you and me and Daddy, and we're all happy. You can keep it so you remember that some people are nice. Lily knelt down to Emma's level, accepting the drawing with the reverence it deserved. This is beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you. The bus, Emma suddenly remembered, racing for the door. Bye, Daddy. Bye, Lily. Don't go anywhere while I'm at school, okay? And then she was gone, leaving Marcus and Lily in the sudden quiet of the empty house. She's amazing, Lily said, still looking at the crayon drawing. You've raised an incredible little girl. She's pretty great, Marcus agreed, then hesitated before adding, her mother left when Emma was 5, just packed up one day while I was at work and left a note saying she needed to find herself. Emma's been in therapy, but she still has moments when she's afraid people are going to disappear from her life. Is that why you helped me yesterday? Because you understand what it's like to be left behind? Marcus considered the question as he grabbed his work jacket from the hall closet. Maybe partly, but mostly it's because you looked like someone who needed help and I had the ability to give it. That's not complicated.
Lily followed him to the front door, fidgeting with the belt of Sarah's borrowed dress. What am I supposed to do while you're at work? I feel useless just sitting here. You're not useless. You're regrouping. There's a difference. Marcus picked up his keys, then paused. But if you need something to do, there's a garden out back that Emma and I planted last spring. It's gotten a little wild. We're not exactly master gardeners. You could work on that if you want. I'd like that, Lily said, and for the first time since he'd met her, she sounded genuinely hopeful. Marcus hesitated at the door, suddenly aware that he was leaving a woman he barely knew alone in his house with access to all his personal belongings, his financial information, Emma's school records. Everything rational told him this was reckless. But looking at Lily's grateful smile, at Emma's drawing still clutched in her hands, his instincts told him something different. My number's on the refrigerator if you need anything, he said. And Dolores at the diner keeps an eye on the neighborhood. She'll probably check on you around lunchtime. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. I know this is a lot to ask of a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. Strangers don't make pancakes from scratch. He was halfway to work when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, and for a moment he considered letting it go to voicemail. But something made him answer. Marcus Williams? Yes? This is Detective Sarah Coleman with the Savannah Police Department. I'm calling about a missing person case. Lily Chen. We have reason to believe she might have contacted you or been seen in your area. Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of reason? Her fiancé, Vincent Torrino, reported her missing yesterday evening. He mentioned that she'd been talking about visiting Cedar Falls recently, something about childhood memories of the area. Mr. Torrino is very concerned about her mental state. Apparently she's been under a lot of stress lately, making irrational decisions. Every word out of the detective's mouth raised more red flags. Marcus had been married to someone whose mental state had been questioned when she'd tried to ask for help. He'd seen how effectively abusers could manipulate the narrative, turning their victims' cries for help into evidence of instability. I'm sorry, Detective, but I don't think I can help you.
I don't know anyone named Lily Chen. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Williams, Mr. Torrino mentioned that Lily Chen might be traveling under emotional duress. If you've had any contact with her, it's important that we locate her as soon as possible, for her own safety. Like I said, I don't know anyone by that name. If that's all? Mr. Williams, the detective's voice took on a sharper edge. Interfering with a missing person investigation is a serious matter. If you're harboring someone who's been reported missing, you could be charged with obstruction of justice. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of Rodriguez Auto Shop, his mind racing. In the span of 12 hours, helping a stranger had evolved from a simple act of kindness into something that could potentially cost him his job, his custody of Emma, his financial information, Emma's school records. Everything rational told him this was reckless. But looking at Lily's grateful smile, at Emma's drawing still clutched in her hands, his instincts told him something different. "My number's on the refrigerator if you need anything," he said finally, "and Dolores at the diner keeps an eye on the neighborhood. She'll probably check on you around lunchtime." "Have a good day, Detective." He hung up before she could respond, then sat in his truck for a long moment, staring at the familiar side of the auto shop where he'd worked for 8 years. Inside, his coworkers were probably already deep into their morning routines. Carlos arguing with the coffee machine that never quite worked right, old Pete complaining about customers who thought they knew more about transmissions than he did.
It was a simple life, predictable and safe. The kind of life that didn't include runaway brides or phone calls from detectives or the growing certainty that he was in over his head. But it also didn't include the sight of Lily's grateful tears when he'd offered her shelter, or Emma's easy acceptance of someone who needed help, or the warm feeling of rightness he'd experienced watching his daughter and their unexpected guests making pancakes together. Marcus Williams wasn't a hero, but as he walked into the auto shop to begin another ordinary day, he was beginning to understand that heroism might not be about being extraordinary. It might just be about doing the right thing, especially when it wasn't the safe thing. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for not lying to protect yourself. I heard enough to know Vincent found me. We need to talk when you get home. L." Marcus stared at the message, realizing that Lily must have been listening when the detective called. She'd heard him choose her safety over his own, and now she was warning him that their problems were about to get much more complicated. But as he tucked the phone back into his pocket and grabbed his work coveralls, Marcus found himself oddly at peace with whatever came next. For the first time in months, maybe years, he was absolutely certain he was doing the right thing, even if it turned out to be the hardest thing he'd ever done. The garden behind Marcus's house had once been his grandmother's pride and joy. Neat rows of tomatoes, peppers, and herbs that she'd tended with the same devotion most people reserved for church. After she passed and Marcus inherited the house, he'd tried to maintain it, but between work and Emma's schedule, the garden had devolved into a battleground where vegetables fought weeds for supremacy, and the weeds were winning. When Marcus pulled into his driveway that evening, he could see Lily kneeling among the tomato plants, her borrowed dress traded for a pair of his old jeans and a t-shirt. She'd somehow managed to resurrect order from the chaos, and the setting sun painted everything in golden light that made the scene look almost pastoral. For a moment, he could forget about Detective Coleman's phone call, about the weight of secrets growing heavier by the hour. "Daddy!" Emma burst from the house before Marcus had even turned off the engine. "Lily made the garden beautiful again, and she taught me about which plants are friends and which ones don't like each other." Lily looked up from where she was carefully tying tomato vines to wooden stakes, dirt streaking her cheek and satisfaction evident in her smile. "Companion planting,"
she explained, rising to brush soil from her knees. "My father taught me. Tomatoes grow better near basil, and marigolds keep the bugs away." "It looks incredible," Marcus said, and he meant it. The transformation was remarkable. What had been a tangle of overgrown chaos now showed clear pathways, organized beds, and plants that looked like they might actually produce edible food. But even as he admired Lily's work, Marcus couldn't shake the conversation with Detective Coleman. As they headed inside for dinner, he caught Lily's eye and saw his own concern reflected there. They needed to talk, but not in front of Emma. Dinner was leftover soup warmed up with fresh bread that Lily had somehow managed to bake during her day of garden restoration. Emma chattered about her school day, about the substitute teacher who let them have extra recess, about her friend Madison's upcoming birthday party. Normal, everyday conversation that felt precious because Marcus wasn't sure how much longer they could maintain this illusion of normalcy. "Bath time, kiddo," Marcus announced when Emma started yawning over her soup bowl. "School night. Can Lily tell me another princess story?" Emma asked hopefully.
"If she's not too tired," Marcus replied, catching Lily's nod of agreement. As the sounds of bathwater and Emma's excited chatter drifted down from upstairs, Marcus began clearing the dinner dishes, hyper-aware of Lily's presence beside him. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, charged with the tension of unspoken words. "So," Lily said quietly, handing him a dried plate. "Detective Coleman? You heard the whole conversation?" "Enough to know Vincent's already spinning the story, making me the unstable one who needs to be rescued from my own poor judgment." Lily's laugh held no humor. "It's actually kind of brilliant. If anyone questions his story later, he can point to the police report showing how concerned he was about my mental health." Marcus studied her face, looking for signs of the instability that Detective Coleman had implied. Instead, he saw clear-eyed intelligence and a growing strength that hadn't been there yesterday morning. "What else did you hear today?" "A lot of thinking. About my father, about the restaurant, about why I let Vincent take over my life so completely." Lily dried her hands on the dish towel, her movements precise and controlled. "I called my father's lawyer this afternoon, asked him to meet me tomorrow to discuss my options regarding the restaurant." Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. "Lily, if Vincent is involved in something illegal and he's counting on access to that property, then me taking control of it back throws a wrench in his plans," Lily finished. "I know, but hiding here forever isn't a solution, Marcus. Vincent will eventually figure out where I am, and when he does, I want to be in a position of strength, not cowering in someone else's guest room." From upstairs, Emma's voice called down, "I'm ready for my story!" Lily smiled, but Marcus could see the determination beneath it. "We'll finish this conversation after she's asleep," she said, heading for the stairs. Marcus spent the next hour trying to focus on ordinary tasks, checking Emma's homework folder, preparing her lunch for tomorrow, loading the dishwasher. But his mind kept circling back to the growing complexity of their situation. What had started as a simple rescue was evolving into something that could have serious consequences for all of them. When Lily finally came back downstairs, she found Marcus sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, frowning at the screen. "Research?" she asked, settling into the chair across from him. "Vincent Torrino," Marcus replied, turning the laptop so she could see the research results. "Took me a while to find anything substantial, but once I started looking at business records and court documents..." Lily leaned forward, studying the screen. Most of the search results were innocuous. Social media profiles showing Vincent at charity events, newspaper photos from gallery openings, mentions in business journals. But Marcus had found more interesting information buried deeper. Import-export business with offices in Savannah, Miami, and New York, Marcus read from a business filing. But look at this. 3 different companies with similar names, all registered to different addresses, all listing Vincent as a partner or consultant. Shell companies? Maybe. And here, Marcus clicked to another tab. A court case from 2 years ago. Vincent was questioned in connection with a drug trafficking investigation, but charges were never filed. Insufficient evidence. Lily's face had gone pale. I knew something was wrong, but I thought maybe tax evasion, money laundering, something white-collar, but drugs? There's more. Marcus pulled up a news article from the Savannah Morning Herald. Remember you said Vincent invited a lot of people to the wedding you'd never met? Look at this guest list from a charity gala he attended last month. The article included a photo of Vincent in a tuxedo, standing next to several other men in expensive suits. But it was the caption that made Lily gasp. Local businessman Vincent Torrino with associates including Anthony Marcelli, currently under federal investigation for racketeering, and James Big Jim Kowalski, recently released after serving 8 years for money laundering. Oh God, Lily whispered. I shook hands with these people. They sent wedding gifts, cash gifts totaling almost $50,000. Marcus closed the laptop, suddenly aware of how exposed they were sitting in his brightly lit kitchen. We need to call someone. The FBI, maybe? Or, with what evidence? Lily interrupted. Suspicions? Overheard phone conversations in a language I don't speak? They'll want proof, Marcus, and I don't have any. Then we get proof. The words surprised Marcus as much as they surprised Lily. He wasn't the kind of person who went looking for trouble, who stuck his neck out for causes. But looking at Lily's frightened face, thinking about Emma sleeping peacefully upstairs, he felt something crystallize in his chest, a determination he hadn't known he possessed. How? Lily asked. Your father's restaurant. If Vincent is planning to use it for storage, there might be evidence there already. Or we could... Marcus stopped, realizing what he was suggesting. Actually, forget I said that. This is crazy. We should just pack up tonight, drive somewhere Vincent can't find us, start over. Run away, you mean? Relocate, Marcus corrected. Emma and I could go anywhere. I can fix cars in any town. We could disappear, the three of us. Lily was quiet for a long moment, studying her hands. When she looked up, her expression was resolute. What about the next woman Vincent targets, the one who doesn't have anyone to help her run? What about all the people who might get hurt by whatever he's trafficking through my father's restaurant? That's not your responsibility. Isn't it? That property is mine. If I let him use it for criminal activity because I'm too scared to fight back, aren't I complicit? Marcus wanted to argue, to point out that her first responsibility was to her own safety. But he could see the conviction growing in her eyes, the same stubborn pride she'd inherited from her father. Okay, he said finally. Say we try to get evidence. What's the plan? Before Lily could answer, Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed his sister Rachel's number, and he answered without thinking. Hey, Rach, what's... Marcus, thank God. I just got the strangest call. Some man claiming to be a private investigator, asking if she'd seen you recently, if you'd mentioned having house guests. He said you might be harboring a mentally unstable woman who'd gone missing from her wedding. Marcus's blood ran cold. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell and hung up. But Marcus, what's going on? Who is this woman and why are private investigators looking for her? I'm trying to keep us safe. Just trust me, okay? And maybe keep an eye on Mom's place too. Just in case. After he hung up, Lily was already moving toward the stairs. I need to pack, she said. I can't let this blow back on you and Emma. Where will you go? I don't know. A motel somewhere. The bus station. It doesn't matter. Marcus caught her arm gently. It matters to me and to Emma. Emma will be safer without me here. Maybe. Or maybe she'll be safer when Vincent Torrino is behind bars and can't hurt anyone else. Lily searched his face. You really want to do this? Risk everything to help someone you met yesterday? Marcus thought about Emma's drawing, still stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a butterfly, about the way Lily had transformed his chaotic garden into something beautiful and purposeful, about the warmth in his kitchen when the three of them had shared breakfast that morning. I want to do what's right, he said, and right now, that means making sure Vincent can't do this to anyone else. They spent the next 2 hours making plans.
Lily would meet with her father's lawyer in the morning, officially taking control of the restaurant property and changing all the locks. Marcus would take a personal day from work and accompany her, partly for protection, partly because he was increasingly certain that Vincent's criminal network was larger and more dangerous than either of them had initially realized. "What about Emma? School's closed tomorrow for a teacher workday. We can't leave her alone, but we can't take her with us either." "Dolores," he said without hesitation. "She's been like a grandmother to Emma since we moved back to town. Emma loves spending time at the diner." "Will she ask questions?" "Probably, but she won't get answers she doesn't need, and she won't let anyone hurt Emma. Dolores is tougher than she looks." As they finalized their plans, Marcus found himself studying Lily's profile in the lamplight. The frightened bride he'd picked up yesterday was gone, replaced by someone harder, more focused. Someone who reminded him of his grandmother when she'd been fighting the county council to save the local library, or his mother when she'd stood up to his father's drinking buddies who thought domestic violence was a private family matter. "You know," he said, "for someone who supposedly needs rescuing from her own poor judgment, you're pretty good at strategic thinking." Lily's smile was grim. "My father used to say that the bamboo that bends in the storm survives, while the oak tree breaks. I've been bending for months. Maybe it's time to see how strong my roots really are." They were interrupted by the sound of a car pulling into the driveway, headlights sweeping across the kitchen windows. Marcus felt his stomach drop. It was nearly 11 o'clock, and unexpected visitors at this hour were never good news. "Stay here," he told Lily, moving toward the front door. Through the pier hole, he could see a black sedan with tinted windows parked behind his truck. Two men in dark suits stood on his front porch, and one was reaching toward the doorbell. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. "Mr. Williams, this is Detective Coleman. We need to speak with you immediately regarding Lily Chen. Please open the door." But looking through the pier hole again, Marcus was certain neither of these men was a police detective. They were too polished, too well-dressed for late-night official business, and Detective Coleman was a woman's voice on the phone.
"Lily?" he called softly. "Back door. Now." She appeared in the hallway, already moving toward the kitchen. "Where's it?" "Vincent's people. They found us." The doorbell rang, followed by heavy knocking. Upstairs, Emma stirred, but didn't wake. She'd always been a deep sleeper, thank God. Marcus's mind raced through their options. The back door led to the yard, but the fence was too high for easy escape, and they'd be visible in the moonlight. The basement had a small window that opened to the side yard, but it would be a tight squeeze. "Mr. Williams," one of the men called through the door. "We just want to talk. We're concerned about Miss Chen's welfare." More knocking, more insistent now. Lily appeared at Marcus's side, Emma's overnight bag in her hands. "If we run, they'll know we're guilty of something," she whispered. "If we answer the door, we might not get a chance to run," Marcus replied. The knocking stopped abruptly, and Marcus heard the men's voices moving around the side of the house. They were checking for other exits, other ways in. "Basement," Marcus decided. "There's a crawl space that connects to the garage. We can get to the truck from there." But even as they crept toward the basement stairs, Marcus knew they were just delaying the inevitable. Vincent had found them once. He'd find them again. And next time, he might not bother with polite conversations through locked doors. As they huddled in the darkness of the basement, listening to footsteps circle the house above them, Marcus realized that their plans for tomorrow had just become much more urgent. They weren't just going to reclaim Lily's father's restaurant anymore. They were going to war. And Marcus Williams, who'd never considered himself a hero, was about to discover just how far he was willing to go to protect the people he cared about. The footsteps above them paused at the back door,
and Marcus heard the distinct sound of someone testing the handle. In the darkness beside him, Lily's breathing was carefully controlled, but he could feel her fear radiating like heat. Upstairs, Emma slept on, unaware that her world was about to change forever. The footsteps above them moved with methodical precision, pausing at each window, testing each potential entry point. Marcus counted 2 distinct patterns of movement. The men were working systematically around the house, professional in their approach. These weren't desperate criminals making impulsive decisions. These were people who knew what they were doing. In the basement's darkness, Lily pressed something into Marcus's hand, his own phone, which she'd grabbed from the kitchen counter during their hurried retreat. "Call 911, she whispered, barely audible. Marcus shook his head, pulling her closer so he could speak directly into her ear. "And tell them what? That 2 well-dressed men rang our doorbell? They haven't actually committed a crime yet." Above them, one of the men was trying the basement door that led from the kitchen. The handle turned, but Marcus had thrown the deadbolt earlier as part of his nightly routine, a habit he developed after Emma had sleepwalked down there once and scared them both half to death. The man rattled the door more forcefully, and Marcus felt Lily tense beside him. They had perhaps minutes before Vincent's people decided that subtlety was no longer necessary. Marcus pulled up his contact list and scrolled to a number he hadn't called in months. Pete Rodriguez, his boss at the auto shop, was also a volunteer with the Cedar Falls Fire
Department and had connections throughout local law enforcement that went back 30 years. The call was answered on the second ring. "Marcus? Jesus, kid, it's almost midnight. Everything okay?" Marcus whispered, "Pete, I need help. I can't explain everything right now, but there are men trying to break into my house. They're not local police, and I think Emma and I are in danger." There was a pause. Then Pete's voice came back sharper, more focused. "Where's Emma now?" "Asleep upstairs. Pete, these aren't random burglars. This is connected to something bigger, something federal maybe." "I'm calling it into dispatch right now. Sheriff Martinez will have units rolling in 3 minutes. Can you get to Emma and barricade yourselves in a room with a solid door?" Before Marcus could answer, they heard the unmistakable sound of breaking glass from the kitchen above. One of the men had decided patience was no longer required. "They're inside," Marcus whispered into the phone. "Stay on the line," Pete commanded, "and get to your daughter, now." Marcus grabbed Lily's hand and moved toward the basement stairs, but she pulled back. "If they're here for me, maybe I should—" "No." Marcus's voice was firm, despite its whisper. "We stayed together, all of us." They crept up the basement stairs, Marcus testing each step for creaks before putting his full weight down. At the top, he could hear voices in the kitchen, 2 men speaking in low, professional tones. "Check the upstairs. I'll take the main floor." "What about the kid?" "Vincent wants the woman. Kid's not our problem unless she makes it our problem." Marcus felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. These men were discussing his daughter like she was a minor obstacle rather than a human being. Whatever restraint he'd been feeling about getting involved in Lily's situation evaporated completely. The basement door was directly across from the stairs leading to the second floor. If they moved quickly and quietly, they could reach Emma's room before the men finished their search of the kitchen and living room. Marcus opened the basement door a crack, listening. One set of footsteps was moving toward the front of the house. The other was checking the dining room. He could hear drawers being opened, papers rustled. "Now," he mouthed to Lily. They slipped through the door and up the stairs, Marcus's heart hammering so loudly he was certain the entire neighborhood could hear it. Emma's door was open, and she was still deeply asleep, one arm flung over her stuffed elephant. Marcus scooped her up as gently as possible, grateful when she only stirred slightly before settling against his shoulder. Lily grabbed Emma's backpack from the chair by the window, stuffing it with clothes from the dresser with quick, efficient movements. They were back in the hallway when they heard footsteps on the stairs below.
Marcus's bedroom was at the end of the hall, with a lock on the door and a window that opened onto the roof over the front porch. It wasn't ideal, but it was defensible. They made it inside just as the first man reached the top of the stairs. Marcus turned the lock and moved Emma to his bed, where she continued to sleep with the profound unconsciousness of childhood. "Window," Lily whispered, already working to open the old-fashioned sash. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was muzzy with sleep. "What's happening?"
"Shh, baby," Marcus soothed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "We're playing a game. We need to be very, very quiet, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly, more awake now, but still trusting in the way that broke Marcus's heart. She shouldn't have to wake up to danger, shouldn't have to learn that sometimes bad people came looking for the good ones. A soft knock on the bedroom door made them all freeze. "Mr. Williams," the voice was polite, almost conversational. "We know you're in there. We just want to talk to Miss Chen. No one needs to get hurt." Marcus moved closer to the door. "Talk about what?" "Miss Chen has something that belongs to our employer. We're here to facilitate its return." "I don't have anything of Vincent's," Lily called out, her voice steadier than Marcus had expected. "I left everything at his house." "Not everything, Miss Chen. You have access to certain properties that Mr. Torrino needs to maintain his business operations. We're here to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement." Through the window, Marcus could see flashing lights in the distance. Sheriff Martinez's deputies were finally responding to Pete's call, but they were still several blocks away, and these men didn't seem like the type to be deterred by local law enforcement. "What kind of arrangement?" Lily asked, moving closer to the door. Marcus caught her arm, shaking his head, but she had a look he was beginning to recognize, the same determined expression she'd worn when talking about taking control of her father's restaurant. "A simple lease agreement," the man continued. "Mr. Torrino pays you fair market value for the use of your restaurant property. You relocate somewhere more suitable for a fresh start. Everyone wins." "And if I refuse?" There was a long pause before the man answered. "Miss Chen, Mr. Torrino is a reasonable businessman, but he has partners who are less patient with obstacles to their operations." The threat was clear, delivered in the same conversational tone someone might use to discuss the weather. Marcus felt his phone vibrate with a text from Pete. "2 minutes out. Keep them talking." "I need time to think about it," Lily said. "Of course, but not too much time. Mr. Torrino's partners have invested considerable resources in this project. They're expecting returns soon." The sound of sirens was getting closer now, and Marcus could see the change in the man's tone even through the door. "It seems you've involved local law enforcement, Mr. Williams. That's unfortunate. It complicates things unnecessarily." "Daddy, are the police coming to help us?" Before Marcus could answer, they heard rapid footsteps in the hallway, then the sound of the front door opening and closing. Car doors slammed outside, followed by the roar of an engine pulling away quickly. Marcus waited until he was certain the house was empty before unlocking the bedroom door. The kitchen window was indeed broken, glass scattered across the linoleum floor, but otherwise the house appeared undamaged. Professional work. They'd taken what they came for, which was information about Lily's location and state of mind, without causing unnecessary destruction. Sheriff Martinez arrived 3 minutes later with 2 deputies, followed quickly by Pete Rodriguez in his personal truck. The sheriff was a woman in her 50s who'd known Marcus since he was Emma's age, and she listened to his carefully edited version of events with sharp attention.
"So these men claimed to be private investigators working for Ms. Chen's fiancé," Sheriff Martinez clarified. "That's what they said," Marcus confirmed. "But they broke into my house when I wouldn't open the door." "And Ms. Chen, you believe your fiancé sent them?" Lily nodded. "Vincent Torrino. We were supposed to be married yesterday, but I had concerns about his business activities. When I tried to end the relationship, he began stalking me. It was a simplified version of the truth, but Marcus could see that Sheriff Martinez was filling in the blanks accurately. Domestic violence cases often followed similar patterns: isolation, control, escalation when the victim tried to leave. "Any chance these business activities are illegal?" the sheriff asked. "I suspect so, but I don't have proof," Lily admitted. Sheriff Martinez exchanged a look with her deputies. "We'll file a report and increase patrols in this area. But Mr. Williams, if these people are involved in federal crimes, local law enforcement might not be enough protection." After the police left, Pete lingered on the front porch with Marcus while Lily helped Emma get settled back into bed. "Kid, what aren't you telling me?" Pete asked bluntly. "I've known you since you were 16 years old. You don't get involved in drama. You fix cars and raise your daughter and mind your own business. So what's different about this woman?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. Pete had been like a father to him since his own dad had died, and lying to him felt wrong. But the truth was complicated. "She needed help," Marcus said finally, "and I had the ability to give it. Sometimes that's enough. And sometimes it gets good people killed, Marcus. These weren't local boys trying to rob your house. These were professionals. The kind of people who make problems disappear. Permanently." "I know." "Do you? Because I'm looking at a man who's thinking about doing something stupid and heroic instead of something smart and safe." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, listening to the sound of Lily's voice upstairs as she told Emma another story to help her fall back asleep. Normal sounds, domestic and warm, in a house that had just been violated by strangers with polite voices and violent intentions. "What would you do if it was your family being threatened?" "I'd protect them, by any means necessary. That's what I'm doing." Pete studied Marcus's face in the porch light. "This woman, she is not just a stranger anymore, is she?" Marcus wanted to deny it, to claim that his motivation was purely altruistic, but Pete knew him too well for lies. "Emma drew a picture of the three of us today. Happy family. She's already attached, Pete. And Lily, she's good for us. She makes Emma laugh. She fixed my grandmother's garden. She bakes bread from scratch. And she's brought armed men to your door. She didn't ask for any of this. Vincent Torrino did this. And if we don't stop him, he'll do it to someone else." Pete was quiet for a moment, then sighed heavily. "What do you need?" "Information. Vincent's using shell companies for his import business, but I need to know more about his criminal network. Financial records, shipping manifests, anything that might give us leverage." "That's not exactly my area of expertise."
But you know people who could help. People in federal law enforcement who might be interested in a drug trafficking operation using a family restaurant as a front. Pete rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "I might know someone. FBI agent who worked a case here a few years back. But Marcus, once you make that call, there's no going back. You'll be witnesses in a federal investigation. Your life, Emma's life, they'll never be the same." Marcus looked back toward the house, where warm light spilled from Emma's bedroom window. Inside, Lily was probably reading another story, using different voices for each character, making magic out of words the way his grandmother used to do. "They're already not the same," Marcus said. "At least this way, maybe we can make sure they're better." Pete nodded slowly. "I'll make some calls in the morning, but tonight you all need to be somewhere else. These guys know where you live now." "Where can we go?" "My cabin up at Lake Murray. It's isolated, off the grid, and I've got security measures that might slow down uninvited guests." As they made plans for the middle-of-the-night relocation, Marcus felt a strange sense of calm settling over him. For months, maybe years, he'd been drifting through life, going through the motions of work and fatherhood without any real sense of purpose beyond basic survival. Now, with danger circling his family and a woman who'd become precious to them in just 2 days, Marcus finally understood what he was fighting for. Not just Emma's safety, though that remained paramount. Not just Lily's freedom, though that mattered more than he'd expected. He was fighting for the possibility of something better, for the chance to build a life based on choice rather than circumstance, on love rather than obligation, on hope rather than mere endurance. Tomorrow, they would begin gathering evidence against Vincent Torrino and his criminal network. They would transform from victims into agents of their own fate. But tonight, as Marcus packed Emma's favorite stuffed animals and Lily gathered the herbs she'd been drying from the garden, they were simply a family preparing to protect each other. And that, Marcus thought, as he carried his sleeping daughter to the truck, was the most heroic thing he'd ever done. Pete's cabin at Lake Murray sat on 20 acres of wooded property, accessible only by a gravel road that wound through pine trees and ended at a clearing overlooking the water. It was the kind of place city people rented for weekend getaways, rustic enough to feel authentic, but comfortable enough for families with young children. Emma woke up in the loft bedroom 3 hours after sunrise, confused but adaptable in the way children often are. By the time Marcus had explained that they were having an adventure at Uncle Pete's cabin, she was already exploring the dock that extended into the lake and asking if they could go fishing. After breakfast, Lily promised, standing at the cabin's small stove and somehow managing to make pancakes from the basic ingredients Pete kept stocked. But first, we need to help your daddy with some important phone calls. Those phone calls, as it turned out, would change everything. Special Agent Maria Santos of the FBI's Atlanta field office arrived at the cabin just after noon, driving an unmarked sedan that looked like every other government car Marcus had ever seen. She was younger than he had expected, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that missed nothing.
"Mr. Rodriguez spoke very highly of you," Agent Santos said, settling into one of the cabin's mismatched chairs, while Emma played with her dolls on the braided rug nearby. "He also mentioned that you might have information about Vincent Torrino's operation." "How much do you already know about him?" Lily asked. "More than he thinks we do," Agent Santos replied. "Torrino's been on our radar for 8 months. We have evidence of money laundering through his import businesses, but we've been waiting for an opportunity to get closer to his distribution network." She pulled out a tablet and showed them a series of surveillance photos. Vincent at various locations around Savannah, always well-dressed, always accompanied by the same group of men Marcus recognized from his internet research. "The problem is that Torrino's careful. He uses legitimate businesses as fronts, keeps financial records clean, never handles drugs or cash directly. We need evidence of his actual criminal activity, not just suspicious behavior patterns." "What about my father's restaurant?" Lily asked. "If Vincent's planning to use it as a storage facility—" "That's exactly the kind of break we've been hoping for," Agent Santos interrupted. "If we can document him moving drugs through a property he gained access to through marriage, we can connect him directly to trafficking charges." Emma looked up from her dolls. "Are you a police lady?" "Something like that, sweetheart," Agent Santos replied with a gentle smile. "I help catch bad guys who break important rules." "Like the men who came to our house last night?" Agent Santos's expression sharpened. "Tell me about these men." As Marcus and Lily recounted the previous night's events, Agent Santos took detailed notes. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment, clearly processing the implications. They identified themselves as private investigators? They claimed to be working for Vincent, trying to find Lily for her own safety. But they broke into your house when you wouldn't cooperate voluntarily. Professional job, too, Marcus added. They knew exactly what they were doing. Agent Santos nodded grimly. "That's escalation. Torrino's feeling pressure from his partners, probably because your disappearance has disrupted their timeline for the restaurant operation. What does that mean for us? Lily asked. It means we need to move quickly. How soon can you take legal control of the restaurant property? Today, if necessary. My father's lawyer has all the paperwork ready. Good. Here's what I'm proposing. You sign the papers, take control of the property, and then we set up surveillance. When Torrino or his people show up to use the restaurant, we'll be ready. And in the meantime, we just wait here while Vincent gets more desperate? Vincent Torrino has operated for years without violence because violence brings attention he can't afford. But his partners... Agent Santos showed them another photo, this one of a heavy-set man with scarred hands. Anthony Marcelli doesn't share Vincent's restraint. If Marcelli decides you're a threat to their operation, subtlety goes out the window. The weight of their situation was beginning to sink in. What had started as helping a runaway bride was now a federal investigation with potential life-or-death consequences. "Daddy?" Emma said, abandoning her dolls to climb into Marcus's lap. "Are we going to be okay?" Marcus looked at his daughter's trusting face, then at Lily's determined expression, and then at Agent Santos's professional competence. For the first time since this whole situation began, he felt like they might actually have a chance.
"We're gonna be fine, baby," he said, and found that he actually believed it. "We're going to help the police lady catch the bad guys, and then we're going to go home. Can Lily come home with us?" It was such a simple question, asked with the straightforward logic of childhood. Of course Lily would come home with them. They were a family now. Why would anything change that? Marcus met Lily's eyes over Emma's head, seeing his own hope reflected there. "If she wants to," he said. "I want to," Lily replied softly. "Very much." The next 6 hours moved with the precision of a military operation. Agent Santos coordinated with local FBI resources, while Marcus, Lily, and Emma drove to Savannah under federal protection. 2 agents in an unmarked car following at a discreet distance. The law office of Patterson and Associates occupied the second floor of a restored Victorian mansion in Savannah's historic district. Thomas Patterson had been David Chen's lawyer for 15 years, and he greeted Lily with the gentle formality of someone who'd known her since childhood. "I'm so sorry about the circumstances," he said, as they settled into his office. "Your father was a good man. He'd be proud of what you're doing." The paperwork took less than an hour. Lily signed her name on documents that transferred full ownership of Chen's garden from David Chen's estate to Lily Chen, effective immediately. She also signed papers changing the locks, updating the insurance policy, and registering herself as the sole authorized person for any modifications to the property. "There's one more thing," Patterson said as they prepared to leave. "Your father left a safety deposit box that's now yours. He never told me what was in it, but he insisted that it should only be opened by you and only if something happened to him." "What kind of something?" Lily asked. "His exact words were, 'If anyone ever tries to take the restaurant away from her.' I thought it was just an old man's paranoia, but given recent events..." The safety deposit box was at First National Bank, 3 blocks from the law office. Inside, they found $50,000 in cash, a handwritten letter from David Chen to his daughter, and a manila envelope containing photographs and documents. Lily's hands shook as she read her father's letter aloud. "My dear Lily, if you are reading this, then someone has threatened what we built together. The restaurant was never just a business. It was our family's American dream made real. But I fear that dream has attracted people who would use it for nightmares. The photographs in this envelope show men who came to the restaurant 6 months before my death. They offered to protect the business for a monthly fee. When I refused, they suggested that elderly restaurant owners sometimes had accidents. I took these pictures from the security camera before they could demand the footage. I never told you because I hoped they would forget about us after I was gone. But if they have found you,
If they are pressuring you to give up what we built, then you must fight. Not with violence, but with truth. These photographs are evidence. Use them wisely. The cash is for your fresh start, wherever that may be. But remember, running away sometimes is the bravest choice, and sometimes fighting is. Only you can decide which this is. You are stronger than you know, my daughter. You have your mother's heart and your grandfather's stubborn spirit. Trust both. With all my love, Baba. The photographs were grainy but clear enough to identify faces. Vincent Torrino stood outside Chen's garden with two other men, one of whom Marcus recognized as Anthony Marcelli from Agent Santos's surveillance photos. They were examining the building's exterior with the focused attention of people making plans.
He knew, Lily whispered. My father knew Vincent would come for the restaurant eventually. Agent Santos studied the photographs when they returned to the cabin. These are gold, she said. Proof that Torrino was targeting your father's property before you even met him. It establishes premeditation, makes the case that your entire relationship was part of a criminal conspiracy. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we wait, Agent Santos replied. Lily's taking control of the property will force Torrino to make a move. Either he'll try to intimidate her into cooperation, or he'll attempt to use the restaurant without permission. Either way, we'll be watching. The waiting was the hardest part. For 3 days, they stayed at the cabin while federal agents maintained surveillance on both the restaurant in Savannah and Marcus's house in Cedar Falls. Emma adapted to cabin life with the resilience of childhood, turning the adventure into an extended camping trip complete with fishing lessons from Pete and cooking experiments with Lily. But Marcus could see the strain on both adults. Lily jumped at every unexpected sound, and he found himself checking the locks obsessively, scanning the tree line for movement that might indicate they'd been found. On the 4th morning, Agent Santos's phone rang at sunrise. They're moving, she announced after ending the call. 3 trucks arrived at the restaurant at 4 a.m. Torrino's there personally, along with Marcelli and at least 6 other men. They're unloading boxes into the restaurant's back room. Drugs? Lily asked. We won't know for certain until we test what they're moving, but the pattern matches every other trafficking operation we've documented. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that the waiting was over, terror at what came next. What do we do now? Now, you stay safe while we finish building our case, Agent Santos replied. We have enough evidence for search warrants, but we want to catch them in the act of distribution, not just storage. That means waiting for their buyers to show up. How long will that take? Hours, maybe a day or 2. But Marcus, once we move, once arrests are made, your lives will never be completely private again. Federal cases mean media attention, potential retaliation from other criminal organizations, witness protection protocols. Are you sure this is what you want? Marcus looked at Emma, who was building a fort out of couch cushions while humming a song Lily had taught her. He thought about his quiet life in Cedar Falls, his routine at the auto shop, the predictable safety of ordinary days. Then he looked at Lily, who was watching the sunrise paint the lake in shades of gold and pink, and he thought about the courage it had taken for her to run from Vincent's church, to trust a stranger, to fight for her father's legacy instead of disappearing into anonymity. It's not about what I want, Marcus said finally. It's about what's right. Agent Santos nodded. Then let's finish this. The phone call came 18 hours later. Vincent Torrino, Anthony Marcelli, and 11 other members of their organization were in federal custody. The restaurant had yielded 200 pounds of heroin with a street value of over $3 million, along with financial records linking the operation to criminal networks in Miami, New York, and Chicago. It's over, Agent Santos told them, as they gathered around the cabin's dining table. Torrino's looking at 25 to life on trafficking charges. Marcelli and his people are facing similar sentences.
The evidence you provided, combined with what we collected during the raid, ensures they'll never threaten you again." Emma looked up from her coloring book. "Can we go home now?"
"We can go home," Marcus confirmed, pulling her onto his lap. "All of us?" Emma asked, looking at Lily with hope-filled eyes. "All of us," Lily replied, her voice thick with emotion. That evening, as they packed their few belongings for the return to Cedar Falls, Lily found Marcus standing on the cabin's deck, looking out over the lake where the setting sun painted the water in brilliant oranges and reds. "Second thoughts?" she asked, joining him at the railing. "About which part?" "Any of it. Helping me, getting involved in a federal investigation, inviting a stranger to become part of your family." Marcus considered the question seriously. 4 days ago, his biggest concern had been whether Emma's soccer uniform was clean for Saturday's game. Now he was a key witness in a major drug trafficking case, and his carefully ordered life had been transformed completely. "No second thoughts," he said finally, "but I do have some questions about what comes next." "Such as?" "Such as whether you're planning to reopen your father's restaurant." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that. The building needs a lot of work after what Vincent's people did to it. New equipment, fresh paint, a complete renovation, really." "That sounds expensive." "It would be, but I have my father's savings, and Agent Santos mentioned that victims of federal crimes sometimes receive compensation from seized assets. It might be possible." Marcus turned to face her. "And if it is possible? If you could reopen Chen's garden exactly the way you wanted it?" "Then I'd want it to be something my father would be proud of. Good food, honest prices, a place where families could make memories together." She paused, then added softly, "A place where a single dad could bring his daughter for pancakes on Sunday mornings." "Cedar Falls could use a good Chinese restaurant," Marcus observed. "Cedar Falls? I might know someone who could help with the renovation work. Auto mechanics are pretty good with tools, and my daughter's been talking about wanting to learn how to cook properly." Lily's smile started slowly, then spread across her entire face. "That sounds perfect." From inside the cabin, Emma's voice called out, "Daddy! Lily! Come see my picture!" They found her at the dining table, surrounded by crayons and sheets of paper. She'd drawn a picture of a building with a sign that read, "Chen's Garden," in crooked letters. In front of the building stood 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one labeled Daddy, a shorter one labeled Emma, and a medium one labeled Lily. "It's our restaurant," Emma announced proudly. "Lily can cook, and you can fix things, and I can help both of you, and we can all live happily ever after, like in the stories." Marcus looked at the drawing, then at Lily's tear-filled eyes, then at his daughter's expectant face. "I think that sounds like the best plan I've ever heard," he said. 3 months later, Chen's Garden reopened in a restored building on Main Street in Cedar Falls, just 2 blocks from Rodriguez Auto Shop. The grand opening featured authentic Taiwanese dishes alongside Emma's favorite pancakes, served by a family that had learned that sometimes the best adventures began with the simple decision to help a stranger in need.
The local newspaper ran a feature story about the restaurant's reopening, mentioning that the owner had recently assisted federal authorities in dismantling a major drug trafficking operation. But by then, Vincent Torrino was just a memory, and the only thing that mattered was the sound of laughter drifting from the kitchen where Marcus taught Emma how to fold dumplings while Lily prepared sauce that her father had taught her to make 40 years earlier. Outside, a small sign in the window read, "Family Recipes, Family Values, Family Welcome." Inside, 3 people who had found each other in the midst of crisis continued building. The morning rush at Chen's Garden had become the heartbeat of Cedar Falls' downtown revival. By 7 a.m., the restaurant was filled with construction workers grabbing breakfast burritos, Lily's fusion of her grandmother's recipes with local tastes, office workers ordering coffee, and Emma's famous blueberry muffins, and retirees who had made the corner booth their unofficial morning meeting place. Marcus arrived at 6:30, as he had every morning for the past 6 months, parking his truck behind the restaurant and entering through the kitchen door that Lily always left unlocked for him. He found her as he always did, hair pinned back with one of Emma's butterfly clips, apron tied around her waist, moving between 3 different stations with the fluid grace of someone who had found her calling. "Morning," he said, kissing her cheek and stealing a piece of bacon from the plate she was preparing. "Morning yourself," she replied, swatting at his hand with a dish towel. "Emma's upstairs finishing her homework. Apparently, she has a presentation about family traditions today." Marcus climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment above the restaurant, where Emma sat at the small kitchen table surrounded by poster board, markers, and photographs. The apartment was cozy rather than spacious. 2 bedrooms, a living area that doubled as Emma's homework space, and a kitchen that served primarily for late-night snacks, since all their real cooking happened downstairs. "How's the project coming, kiddo?" asked Marcus, settling into the chair beside his daughter. "Good. I'm telling about how our family tradition is helping people who need somewhere safe to stay, like when Lily needed help, and then when Mrs. Patterson's house flooded and she stayed with us for 2 weeks, and when Tyler's dad lost his job and we gave them free dinners until he found a new one." Marcus studied the poster, marveling at his daughter's perspective on their life. To Emma, their pattern of opening their home and restaurant to people in need wasn't unusual. It was simply what families did for each other and their community. "Think Mrs. Rodriguez will like it?" Emma asked. Emma's teacher had remarried over the summer, which still confused some of the parents, but delighted the students who got to attend their teacher's wedding. "I think she'll love it," Marcus assured her, "but we better get moving or you'll be late." The drive to Cedar Falls Elementary took them past the site where Marcus's old house had stood until 3 months ago. They'd salvaged the property to a young couple with twin toddlers, but not before salvaging Emma's swing set and transplanting Lily's restored garden to the space behind the restaurant. Now herbs and vegetables grew in neat rows where the parking lot used to end, and customers often asked if they could purchase the tomatoes and peppers that flavored their meals. "Daddy," Emma said, as they pulled into the school parking lot, "are you and Lily going to get married?" It was a question she'd been asking with increasing frequency lately, usually at moments when Marcus was least prepared to answer it thoughtfully. "Would you like us to?" he asked instead. "Yes, but I want a different kind of wedding than Lily almost had, with the bad man. I want one where everyone is happy and no one has to run away." Marcus smiled, thinking of the small velvet box hidden in his tool cabinet at the auto shop, the ring he'd been carrying for 2 weeks while waiting for the right moment. "What would make you happy about a wedding?" he asked.
Dolores making the cake, and Pete walking Lily down the aisle because her daddy can't, and having it at the restaurant so Grandpa Chen's picture can watch, and maybe dancing afterward, but not fancy dancing, just the kind where you spin around until you're dizzy. "Those sound like excellent wedding requirements," Marcus said. "So you are going to ask her?" "I'm thinking about it very seriously." Emma grinned and unbuckled her seatbelt. "I think Lily's thinking about it very seriously, too. She's been practicing writing Lily Williams on the order pads when she thinks no one is looking." Before Marcus could respond to this revelation, Emma had grabbed her backpack and presentation poster and raced toward the school building, calling back, "Tell Lily I'll help with dinner prep after school if she needs me." The wedding took place on a Sunday afternoon in October, when the leaves on Main Street had turned brilliant shades of gold and red. They closed the restaurant for the day, moved the tables to create a ceremony space, and invited the entire town of Cedar Falls to witness what everyone agreed was the most practical and joyful wedding they'd ever attended. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, wearing a dress she'd helped Lily design and carrying a pillow that Dolores had embroidered with "Happily Ever After Starts Here." Pete did indeed walk Lily down the aisle, his eyes suspiciously bright as he placed her hand in Marcus's. And David Chen's photograph, surrounded by flowers from their garden, presided over the ceremony from its place of honor on the mantelpiece.
Sheriff Martinez performed the ceremony, having been ordained online specifically for the occasion. Her speech about love being both a choice and a commitment resonated through a room filled with people who had watched Marcus and Lily build their relationship through crisis, daily partnership, and the thousand small kindnesses that constitute a life shared. The dancing afterward was exactly the kind Emma had requested, joyful and unself-conscious, with couples ranging in age from 5 to 85 spinning around the restaurant floor while a local bluegrass band played on the small stage they'd constructed in the corner. As midnight approached and the last guests finally departed, Marcus found himself alone with his wife, in the restaurant they'd built together. Lily was still in her wedding dress, but she'd traded her fancy shoes for the comfortable flats she wore during their busiest shifts. "No regrets?" Marcus asked, pulling her into his arms for one more dance to the music playing softly from the speakers. "Only one," Lily replied, resting her head against his shoulder. "Which is?" "I wish my father could have met you. He would have loved how you fix everything that's broken." "I didn't fix you," Marcus pointed out. "You were never broken." "No," Lily agreed. "But you helped me remember who I was before someone tried to convince me I was someone else." The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March, during the breakfast rush. Marcus was running the register while Lily supervised Emma, now 13, and officially employed as the restaurant's youngest prep cook, and two other teenagers they'd hired for after-school shifts. "Chen's Garden, this is Marcus."
"Mr. Williams, this is Agent Santos. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Marcus felt a familiar chill at the FBI agent's voice, though he knew logically that their troubles with federal law enforcement were long past. Vincent Torrino had been sentenced to life in federal prison, and his criminal network had been dismantled completely. "What can I do for you, Agent Santos?" "Actually, I'm calling with a proposition. The Bureau has been working with local law enforcement to identify communities that might benefit from our community outreach programs. Cedar Falls keeps coming up in our discussions as a model for how economic development and crime prevention can work together." Marcus looked around the bustling restaurant, at the customers reading newspapers and sharing family breakfasts, at the community bulletin board near the door where people posted job openings and babysitting offers and invitations to local events. "What kind of outreach programs?" "Small business development seminars, youth mentorship opportunities, workshops on financial literacy and internet safety, the kind of programs that help communities thrive rather than just survive." Through the kitchen window, Marcus could see Lily teaching Emma how to julienne vegetables with the precision their grandfather had taught her father 60 years earlier. 3 generations of knowledge passed down through patient instruction and shared purpose. "That sounds like something we'd be interested in supporting," Marcus said. "Excellent. I'll send you some information and we can schedule a planning meeting. Oh, and Mr. Williams, congratulations on your recent expansion. I heard Chen's Garden is opening a second location in Savannah." "Thank you. It felt like the right time to honor Lily's father's legacy by bringing his recipes back to his original neighborhood." After hanging up, Marcus joined his family in the kitchen, where Lily was explaining to Emma and their teenage employees the importance of consistent knife techniques. "Who was that?" Lily asked, not looking up from the cutting board where she was demonstrating proper dicing methods. Agent Santos. The FBI wants to use Cedar Falls as a model community for their outreach programs." "That's wonderful," Lily said, then paused in her demonstration. "It's funny, isn't it? Vincent thought he could use our restaurant for crime, and instead it ended up helping create something that fights crime." Emma looked up from her own careful vegetable preparation. "That's poetic justice, right? When bad choices lead to good consequences in the end?" "Something like that," Marcus agreed, marveling at his daughter's growing sophistication. At 13, Emma split her time between normal teenage concerns and the adult responsibilities that came with being part of a family business. She handled both with a maturity that made him proud and occasionally worried about whether she was growing up too fast. "Dad," Emma continued, "I've been thinking about my project for the state history competition. I want to write about how community resilience develops in response to external threats." "Using what example?" Lily asked. "Us, Cedar Falls. How the town came together after Vincent's drug operation was discovered. How the restaurant became a symbol of refusing to let criminals define our community's character." Marcus exchanged a look with Lily over their daughter's head. Emma was too young to fully understand the danger they had faced during those first few days, but she'd grown up hearing the story, and her perspective on it had evolved as she matured. "That's a significant topic," Marcus said carefully. "Are you sure you want to revisit all of that for a school project?" "Dad, it's not revisiting it, it's understanding it. What happened to us, what we did about it, how it changed our community, that's important history. Not the kind you read about in textbooks, but the kind that shows how ordinary people can choose to make extraordinary differences."
That evening, after the restaurant closed and the family had shared their own quiet dinner upstairs, Marcus found Lily on the small balcony that overlooked Main Street. She was reading one of the business journals she subscribed to, researching trends in sustainable restaurant practices, but she set it aside when he joined her. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, settling into the space beside him on the small love seat they'd placed on the balcony. "Just thinking about how different our lives are from what I expected 5 years ago," Marcus replied. "Different how?" "Bigger, more complicated, more connected to other people's lives and problems and dreams." Lily nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. When Marcus had been a single father working at the auto shop, his world was small and manageable. Emma, work, home, the predictable rhythm of ordinary days. Now, their lives extended far beyond their immediate family to encompass employees, customers, community organizations, and federal law enforcement partnerships. "Do you miss the simplicity?" Lily asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. Did he miss the days when his biggest decision was which frozen dinner to heat up for Emma's lunch? When his only responsibility was showing up for work and being a decent father? "No," he said finally. "I miss the security sometimes, the feeling that I knew what each day would bring, but I don't miss the smallness." The smallness? Feeling like my life was just about getting through each day, instead of building towards something meaningful. Emma's right. What we've created here is important. Not just the restaurant, but the whole network of relationships and support systems we've become part of. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the occasional car drive down Main Street, listening to the sounds of their neighbors settling in for the evening. Cedar Falls had grown in the past 5 years, not dramatically, but steadily, with young families attracted by the town's combination of small-town safety and economic opportunity. Agent Santos mentioned something interesting today about how economic development and crime prevention work together, meaning that when people have legitimate opportunities to build good lives, they're less vulnerable to criminal organizations that prey on desperation and isolation. Lily turned to look at him more directly. "You think that's what we've been doing? Economic development?" "I think we've been creating opportunities for Emma to learn business skills and work ethic, for our employees to gain experience and references, for the community to have a gathering place where people know each other's names and stories, and for ourselves." Marcus smiled, thinking of all the ways his life had expanded since the morning he'd spotted a muddy wedding dress by the roadside. "For ourselves, we've been building a legacy." The 10th anniversary celebration of Chen's Garden filled Main Street with the sounds of live music, children's laughter, and the mingled aromas of Taiwanese street food and Southern barbecue. They'd closed the restaurant for the weekend to host a community festival that had grown far beyond what Marcus and Lily had originally envisioned. Emma, now 23 and the restaurant's manager, coordinated the event with the efficiency she'd inherited from her father and the creative vision she'd learned from Lily. She moved through the crowd with confident competence, solving problems before they became crises, making sure vendors had what they needed and guests felt welcomed. Marcus watched his daughter from the Chen's garden booth, where he was helping Lily serve samples of their most popular dishes to visitors from surrounding towns who'd come specifically for the festival. "She's incredible," observed Dr. Sarah Kim, the new principal of Cedar Falls Elementary, who had moved to town 6 months earlier with her own family. "Emma mentioned she's applied to culinary school, the Culinary Institute of America," Lily confirmed, ladling out portions of her grandmother's dumpling soup. "She's been accepted for their business management program starting in the fall." And after that, Marcus and Lily exchanged a look. This was the question they'd been avoiding discussing directly, though it hung over every conversation about Emma's future. "After that, she'll make her own choices about what comes next," Marcus said diplomatically. But privately, he and Lily both knew that Emma's long-term plan involved returning to Cedar Falls to eventually take over Chen's garden, expanding it into a regional brand while maintaining its community roots. It was an ambitious vision that would require years of education and experience to execute properly. "The next generation always surprises us," Dr. Kim observed. "My own daughter insists she's going to be a marine biologist, despite the fact that we live 3 hours from the nearest ocean." "Dreams have a way of finding their own geography," Lily replied. "Sometimes the place chooses the person as much as the person chooses the place." Late that evening, after the festival crowds had dispersed and the cleanup was complete, the Williams family gathered in the restaurant for their traditional post-event debriefing. It was a ritual they'd developed over the years, sitting around one of the larger tables with notebooks and calculators, reviewing what had worked well and what could be improved for next time. "Overall assessment?" Marcus asked, looking at Emma's detailed notes. "Success beyond projections," Emma replied. "We served approximately 800 people over 2 days, received inquiries from 12 potential vendors for next year's event, and had 3 reporters ask about featuring us in regional tourism publications." "And the community response?" "Overwhelmingly positive. Mayor Davidson mentioned that several families who attended are considering relocating to Cedar Falls. The real estate agent said she gave out more business cards this weekend than in the previous month combined." Lily smiled at her daughter's thorough analysis. "You sound like a business consultant." "I am a business consultant," Emma replied with mock seriousness, "just one who also happens to make excellent spring rolls." As they finished their planning session and prepared to close the restaurant for the night, Marcus found himself reflecting on the strange path that had brought them to this moment. 10 years ago, he'd been a single father with no ambitions beyond providing stability for his daughter. Now he was part of a family business that employed 8 people, served as a community gathering place, and had become a model for rural economic development. "Dad," Emma said, as they turned off the lights and locked the front door, "I have something to tell you." Marcus felt a familiar parental anxiety. "Good something or concerning something?" "Good something. I think. I've been accepted to a summer internship program in Taiwan. The Culinary Institute has a partnership with restaurants in Taipei, and they want students to study traditional cooking methods before starting the fall semester."
Marcus and Lily stopped walking, processing this unexpected news. "Taiwan," Lily repeated slowly. "I know it's far, and I know the timing isn't ideal with the restaurant expansion, but—" "Emma," Lily interrupted gently, "this is wonderful. When would you leave?" "June. I'd be gone for 10 weeks, working in 3 different restaurants and staying with host families." Marcus felt the familiar tug of wanting to protect his daughter from the uncertainties of the wider world, balanced against his understanding that growth required risk and independence. "What do you think, Dad?" Emma asked, clearly reading his internal struggle. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that your great-grandfather came to America with nothing but a suitcase and a head full of dreams. And I think you going to Taiwan to learn about your heritage and develop your skills honors that legacy perfectly." Emma's smile was radiant. "Really? Really. But I reserve the right to worry about you constantly and call you way too often." "Deal," Emma agreed, hugging both her parents. "I love you guys." As they walked home through the quiet streets of Cedar Falls, Marcus reflected on how much courage it took to let the people you love pursue their own adventures. 10 years ago, he'd found Lily by the roadside and brought her home because she needed safety. Now he was preparing to send Emma across the world because she needed a challenge. The circle of protection and release, of gathering people close and then giving them wings, it was perhaps the most essential rhythm of family life. "She'll be amazing," Lily said, reading his thoughts. "I know. That doesn't make it easier to let her go." "We're not letting her go. We're letting her grow." Above them, stars wheeled across the Georgia sky, the same stars that would shine on Emma in Taiwan, connecting her to home even as she explored the wider world. And in a few hours, Chen's garden would open for another day of serving food and building community, continuing the work that had begun with a simple decision to help a stranger in need. Some stories end with dramatic conclusions. Others continue with the quiet satisfaction of meaningful work, sustained love, and the knowledge that ordinary choices can create extraordinary legacies. Marcus Williams had never considered himself a hero, but as he walked home with his wife and daughter, past the restaurant they'd built together and the community they'd helped strengthen, he understood that heroism might simply be the accumulation of small acts of courage performed consistently over time. The next morning would bring new challenges, new opportunities to choose kindness over convenience, connection over safety, growth over comfort. And the Williams family would meet those challenges together, as they always had, building something beautiful one day at a time. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in May, delivered by a nervous-looking young man who introduced himself as a journalism student from the University of Georgia. Emma, now 33 and the sole owner of Chen's Garden, Marcus and Lily had officially retired 2 years ago, though they still helped during busy periods, was reviewing inventory in the restaurant's expanded office space when the student knocked on her door. "Miss Williams, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I'm working on a story about community resilience, and I was hoping to ask you some questions about your family's experience 15 years ago." Emma looked up from her computer screen, studying the young man's earnest expression. She'd received similar requests occasionally over the years, journalists, researchers, even a documentary filmmaker who'd wanted to explore how small communities responded to criminal infiltration.
"What specifically are you hoping to learn?" she asked. "I'm researching how external threats can sometimes strengthen community bonds rather than destroying them. Cedar Falls seems to be a textbook example of that phenomenon." Emma gestured for him to take a seat in the chair across from her desk. The office was larger now than the cramped space her parents had originally worked from, but it maintained the same comfortable clutter: family photos mixed with business awards, Emma's culinary school diploma next to her father's automotive certifications, and her stepmother's grandmother's recipe cards preserved in a frame on the wall. "What's your background?" Emma asked. "Are you from a small town yourself?" "Atlanta, actually. But my professor grew up in rural communities, and she's interested in studying what makes some places thrive after experiencing trauma, while others struggle to recover." Emma nodded, understanding the academic framework he was working within. "And you think Cedar Falls is an example of thriving?" "Aren't you? Your population has grown by 30% in the past 15 years. You have new businesses, active community organizations, one of the lowest crime rates in the state. By most measures, this town is more prosperous and stable now than it was before the criminal organization was discovered." "That's true," Emma agreed.
But I'm not sure our experience is as replicable as your professor might hope. Why not? Emma considered her answer carefully. Over the years, she developed her own theories about what had made their story possible, what elements had been essential versus coincidental. Luck, she said finally. We were incredibly lucky in several crucial ways. The student looked disappointed, clearly hoping for more systematic insights he could apply to his research. Can you be more specific? We were lucky that my father happened to drive past at the exact moment Lily needed help. We were lucky that Agent Santos was competent and trustworthy rather than corrupt or incompetent. We were lucky that Vincent's criminal organization was the kind that relied on subtlety rather than violence. Change any of those factors, and our story could have ended very differently. But what about the choices your family made? The decision to help a stranger, to get involved in a federal investigation, to build something positive from a traumatic experience? Emma smiled, recognizing her own younger self in the student's desire for clear cause and effect relationships. You're right that we made choices, but those choices were only possible because of the community we were already part of. Dolores at the diner, Pete Rodriguez with his law enforcement connections, Sheriff Martinez, who knew our family history. We didn't create resilience from nothing. We activated networks that already existed. The student took notes furiously, then looked up with another question. Your stepmother never remarried her original fiancé, obviously. But do you know what happened to him? To Vincent Torrino? Emma felt the familiar tightness that always accompanied references to Vincent, even after all these years. He died in federal prison 3 years ago, stabbed by another inmate during a dispute over commissary privileges. How did your family feel about that news? Sad, Emma replied, surprising the student with her honesty. Not because we mourned Vincent specifically, but because his death represented the waste of a human life that could have been lived differently. Really? After everything he put you through? My stepmother taught me that carrying anger is like carrying poison. It hurts the person holding it more than anyone else. Vincent made terrible choices that hurt people, including us. But ultimately, he was also a victim of the same criminal networks that he helped perpetuate.
The student scribbled more notes, then asked, "What advice would you give to other communities facing similar threats?" Emma stood and walked to the window that overlooked Main Street, where the afternoon shift change at the textile plant was creating its usual traffic surge. Cedar Falls had attracted 2 new manufacturing facilities in the past decade, providing stable employment for families throughout the region. "I'd tell them that there's no formula for resilience," she said, "but there are conditions that make it more likely. Social capital, economic diversity, institutional trust, and what my father always called practical optimism, the belief that problems can be solved through sustained effort and cooperation. And if those conditions don't exist, then you work to create them, one relationship at a time." After the student left, Emma remained at the window, watching the familiar rhythm of her hometown's daily life. In a few hours, the dinner rush would begin, and the restaurant would fill with families celebrating birthdays, couples on date nights, and teenagers gathering after-school activities. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in an ordinary small town, unremarkable except for the accumulated weight of countless small choices made by ordinary people who had decided to care about each other's welfare. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Lily and I are bringing dessert to tonight's town council meeting. Apparently, they're discussing the proposal for the new community center, and she thinks homemade cookies will improve their decision-making abilities." Emma smiled, imagining her parents arriving at the meeting with containers of Lily's famous almond cookies, working the room with the same gentle persistence that had built their restaurant into a community institution. Some stories concluded with dramatic resolutions. Others continued with the quiet satisfaction of meaningful work, sustained relationships, and the knowledge that ordinary choices could create extraordinary legacies. The Williams family had never set out to become heroes or community leaders or symbols of resilience. They had simply decided, repeatedly, to choose connection over isolation, growth over safety, and hope over fear. And in doing so, they had discovered that heroism might not be about extraordinary moments of courage, but about the accumulation of ordinary moments of kindness performed consistently over time. Emma turned back to her desk, where purchase orders and staff schedules waited for her attention. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to choose who they wanted to be, individually and collectively. But tonight, there was dinner service to supervise and a community to feed, and the ongoing work of building something beautiful, one meal at a time. The raid happened at dawn. FBI agents surrounded Chen's garden as Vincent's crew unloaded their last of their heroin shipment. Agent Santos had positioned Marcus, Lily, and Emma safely at a distance where they could witness Vincent's arrest but remain protected. Vincent Torrino emerged from the restaurant in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his composure finally cracked. For a moment, his eyes found Lily across the parking lot. Even from 50 yards away, Marcus could see the rage and disbelief on Vincent's face, the look of a man who couldn't understand that his carefully controlled world had been dismantled by the woman he'd tried to own. "It's over," Agent Santos announced, approaching their vehicle. "Vincent, Anthony Marcelli, and 11 others are in custody. We recovered enough heroin to put them away for life, plus financial records linking them to operations in 3 states.
Emma pressed her face to the window, watching the police cars drive away. "Are we safe now, Daddy?" "We're safe," Marcus confirmed, pulling both Emma and Lily into a hug. 6 months later, Chen's garden reopened with a new sign: family recipes, family values, family welcome. Lily had used the victim compensation funds to completely renovate the space, creating something that honored her father's memory while building toward their shared future. Marcus officially proposed on the restaurant's opening night, with Emma presenting the ring she'd helped him choose. Lily said yes before he could finish asking the question, tears streaming down her face as the packed dining room erupted in applause. The wedding took place the following spring in the restaurant's back garden, surrounded by the herbs and vegetables Lily had taught Emma to grow. Pete Rodriguez walked Lily down the aisle while Sheriff Martinez officiated. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, wearing a dress she'd designed herself. During their first dance as husband and wife, Marcus whispered in Lily's ear, "No regrets?" "Only one," Lily replied, her eyes sparkling. "I wish my father could have been here to meet the man who saved his daughter." "I didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just happened to be driving by when you needed a ride." Emma, who had been spinning nearby with her flower crown askew, suddenly appeared beside them. "Can I dance too?" They pulled her into their circle, the 3 of them swaying to music that drifted over their guests and their garden and their new beginning. Above them, lanterns twinkled like stars, illuminating faces filled with joy and hope. Marcus Williams had never considered himself a hero, but as he danced with his wife and daughter in the garden behind the restaurant they'd built together, he understood that heroism wasn't about extraordinary moments of courage. It was about choosing love over fear again and again until those choices created something beautiful and lasting and true. If you enjoyed this complete story of courage, love, and second chances, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with friends who appreciate tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Your support helps us continue creating these in-depth stories that celebrate the power of human kindness. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that stranger became family.